What's going on, folks? Welcome back to another episode of All Bets Aren't Created Equal. I hope you are rested. I hope you are refreshed because UFC 261 last week was that was a barn burner, man. That was a historic event. That was one of those pay-per-views, one of those UFC cards that you really feel like is gonna stick with us, for the next couple weeks, months, maybe even years, right? It's one of those where it's like the beginning of this year we had Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier, the rematch, and people still think about that. They still get hyped up when you think like, oh my God, McGregor got knocked out. In this case, we have, oh my God, Weili Zhang gets knocked out, right? Jorge Masvidal gets knocked out. Andrade gets dominated by the bullet Valentina Shevchenko. There was a lot of craziness that went on last weekend, folks, but we in for another good one. We got a banger on our hands. We got a 6-fight main card, and listen, we got a lot to talk about, so let me not waste too much time reviewing, but I do have to say, man, Vegas went 10-3 last week at UFC 261, 13 bouts and only 3 underdog upsets. So we had Kazula Vargas, Rodrigo Vargas, he got the big win. Anthony Smith, in a sort of unfortunate event, gets a win because Jimmy Crute got drop foot. So, hey, man, he caused the injury. Anthony Smith caused the injury, so he does get the win on that one. And then lastly, Rose Namajunas, man, and new. That was mind-blowing. That was one of those where we all felt it. Everyone was choking up, holding back tears because Rose Namajunas is one of those assassins in the octagon, but she is so vulnerable in the other aspects of her, public life that I feel like a lot of the average Joe, the people who's sitting on the couch like me and you and everybody else who's just watching these UFC events, it really feels like we can relate to Rose Namajunas, right? Like, she's a human. Weili Zhang, she was just super, champion, starching everybody, training every day. Rose Namajunas is just a little more relatable. And as an American, right, big win for America, I guess, if you want to call that political stuff and whatnot. But listen, man, it was crazy fight. It was crazy fights, and if this week's cards are anything like last week's, we're gonna have a fun one on our hands. But let me do what I do best, man. Let me start the clock and let's get into it, man. So, like I said, we got 6 fights that we need to talk about here, and we're gonna start off at the top, which we normally do. In Dominic Reyes, former light heavyweight title challenger, 2-time light heavyweight title challenger, is facing off against a monster, a killer, an assassin in Jiri Prochazka. Jiri Prochazka, let me just go off on this guy really quickly. And let me say the opening odds are plus 110 for Dominic Reyes and minus 135 for the favorite in Jiri Prochazka, the individual who's fought throughout Europe and Asia, Germany, all these places, but never the United States. But let me talk about this guy really quickly. He has an MMA record of 27-3-1. He's on an 11-fight win streak right now. He's 1-0 in the UFC. So you could say that 11-fight win streak, you're like, okay, well, what exactly are we talking about? This dude has fought in Ryzen in a majority of his last couple fights, right? Maybe at least 5, 6, maybe even 5 to 10 fights have been in Ryzen, but he's fought all over the place, man. This is a former 2011 Muay Thai Czech national champion. And so let's just talk about that Asian influence, right? He actually had a shot to come to the UFC a couple years back, and he turned it down. And the reason why is he said it himself multiple times. He said because when he came to the UFC, he wanted to be a champion. He didn't want to just show up and take part. He wanted to take over, shout out to the famous words of Conor McGregor. But this is a dude who his last 5 has an average age of 34.8 years of age, right? So while it's like definitely beneficial to go into these other promotions, the Bellators, the Ryzens, even the kickboxing, right? People who come out in kickboxing, we'll talk about a couple kickboxers on this card. People who got that level of experience, it's definitely good because it shows you how to compete. And that's what's very important, is that you're used to competition, you're used to the fans. Now that hopefully we're getting fans back, that was another part on UFC 261. The fans were just crazy. It definitely felt like it brought something special out of the fighters, having the fans back for the first time in over a year. But you get that normalcy, right? You get used to that. Now, the thing that we need to think about in this matchup is that in terms of experience, Jiri Prochazka has vastly more experience than Dominic Reyes. Dominic Reyes is only 12-2 in his MMA career and 6-2 in the UFC, but that's the big kicker right there. The plus 110 underdog, the former light heavyweight title challenger times 2, and Dominic, the Dominator or Devastator or whatever his nickname is, right? Dominic Reyes has a higher level in his last 5 opponents, last 5 people who have been of opposition, he has a much higher level of quality, strength of schedule, if I may, right? Because if we're looking at Prochazka, so he fought for 2 titles as well, right? So 2 title challenges for Reyes and then 2 actual title wins for Prochazka, except the first win was against King Mo, Mo Lawal. It was a TKO round 3 in Ryzen, right? And that's important. That's the Asian promotion fighting out of Japan, right? And then he has another win. So for Lawal, I believe that was a light heavyweight championship that he won there. Then he won the heavyweight championship against CB Dollaway, former UFC veteran, by first round knockout in Ryzen as well. So he's a 2-time Ryzen champion. But when I say that name, Ryzen, what comes to mind? And if you've been watching the UFC recently, if you've been up on game as to the prospects who have been making their debuts into the UFC, Manel Kape would be a familiar name. The flyweight, right? The dude who's a former champion. He was a bantamweight champion out there in Ryzen. Came down a weight class to flyweight out here in the United States, and he's lost his first 2 fights in the UFC. So just because Jiri Prochazka is 1-0 in the UFC, knocked out Volkan Ozdemir, which was a very, very fun fight, just because he's a former champion, just because he's got all these wins, it doesn't always translate to the UFC. So it'll be really interesting to see. But I will say this dude is different. He's a special guy, and waiting his chance to come over to the UFC was definitely a very smart move, in my opinion, because he made it. He's here finally. You know what I mean? And now is a better time than ever, especially in the light heavyweight division, because if you would have tried to do it before, now you got to fight Jon Jones, right? But today, Jan Blachowicz, he's the one who is reigning at the top. He's the king of the light heavyweight division. But listen, man, let's really get into it, though, right? So I talked about Dominick Reyes. When I look at what are some stark differences here, there's not many, right? You know, they're both similar age, 31 years for Reyes, 28 for Prochazka, both 6'4". Prochazka does enjoy a 3-inch reach advantage. But other than that, other than Reyes being a southpaw and Prochazka being orthodox, man, everything is just about the same. The one thing that I do need to note is that takedown average per 15 minutes between both of these is almost virtually 0. So this is going to be a stand-up war. And I guess we should talk about, because that's the measurables and whatnot, and that doesn't really matter, right? But what we need to talk about here is a clash of styles. Now, Dominick Reyes, we saw in his last fight against Jan Blachowicz, he does not deal with the really big, powerful 205ers very well, right? Because when I saw him fight Jon Jones, and I'm seeing him go 5 rounds with Jon Jones, arguably win the fight against Jon Jones, and just not respect the man, just walk forward, pressure, relentless. Like, nobody treats Jon Jones like that, but that's how Reyes had the success that he had. When I saw that, I said, that is a world beater. That is the next champion. And I actually, I betted on Reyes to win against Jan Blachowicz. And what happens? Blachowicz shows, hey, that legendary Polish power. I'm a big 205er. I'm not just a 205er. I'm a big 205er. And you could see the difference just in terms of their frame. Yeah, he didn't handle it well, man. And when Blachowicz was able to just touch him up a couple times, kick him a bunch of times in his body, you know, Reyes didn't hold up. And it was kind of crazy because it's that avalanche effect, right? I mean, that Jon Jones loss is, you know what I mean? Okay, whatever, right? But being knocked out, starched by Jan Blachowicz like that, I think it opens up the door for everybody else in the division to say, oh, okay, well, I mean, those are the only 2 losses he's faced in his career has been against Jon Jones and Jan Blachowicz. Now, we shouldn't disrespect the man for that, because those are literally the 2 best in the division. Jones was the best in the division, so it was 2 champions, basically. But what it comes down to is that it's like, all right, well, I think I could beat him now. I think that, you know, people have showed that he can't handle that power well. And the dude that he's fighting in Jiri Prochazka is a powerful, powerful man. So, like I said, former Ryzen 205 and 265 pound champ. This dude has a tendency to, he's an exciting fighter first off, but he has this tendency to lead with his face, very Stephen Wonderboy Thompson like. So his hands are very low. He's pressure fighter. So he's pressuring you. He's backing you up against the cage. His face is in front of you. He's almost begging to be hit, because he will take 1. He'll even take 2 or 3 so he can get a couple off, because he knows that and he believes in his power so much that yeah, he'll take 1 on the chin. But that's where it's scary, because Dominick Reyes, while he does not have a power advantage whatsoever, he does have a speed advantage. He's very quick, and he has very, very good head movement. And he's a southpaw too, so if he wants to start spamming those kicks out to the body to Jiri Prochazka, they're going to be open. So that's really the question that it comes down to me, because I'm going really back and forth. This is by no means, I mean, the betting line is not bad here, but I do see value in plus 110 for Dominick Reyes. And the reason why is because if he could somehow, some way, manage to stay away from the power, to stay away from the big right hand of Jiri Prochazka, the big overhand punches, If you could stay away from that, he has a case to be able to pick him apart at distance and be able to possibly knock out Yuri Prochazka. And the reason why is because, like I said, Prochazka, his hands are low. His hands are not up in a tight guard. He's not slipping and sliding, doing anything like that. He's literally just trying to stalk you down and start you and throw 1-2 shots that'll get you out of there because he's got that type of power. And that's the type of power that we saw Dominic Reyes struggle with against Jan Blachowicz. So that's why this is so back and forth for me. So I do see value in both of these. And to be honest with you, if I'm really going to sit here and chalk this up to anything, this is going to be, what are you going to bet on? Are you going to bet on the young prospect who's not necessarily young? He's 28 years old. It's not that much younger than Dominic Reyes, but are you going to bet on the young prospect who's going to come in here and just shake up the game and toss this two-time former light heavyweight title challenger to the side and then say, listen, I'm the guy that needs to be fighting for the belt? Are you gonna bet on that, or do you want to bet on experience? You know what I mean? Because Dominic Reyes, though he has less technical MMA experience than Yuri Prochazka, he has more higher level experience in terms of the UFC. When we look at his last 5, so he's 3-2 in his last 5, and those 2 losses I already talked about, Jones and Blachowicz. But the 3 wins is Ovin St. Preux, which was a unanimous decision. He won a split decision against Volkan Ozdemir, which speaks volumes actually because Prochazka fought Ozdemir in his last fight, and he was able to knock him out in 2 rounds. And then the third one is the unfortunate tragedy of the All-American. He knocked out Chris Weidman in the first round, and that's super duper impressive. But that's the thing, is we see every now and then, oh, big knockout for Reyes. He's this dude, he's this star. He's this animal, but for Yuri Prochazka, it's like every fight that is what you see. Because when we're comparing methodologies, we need to take this into consideration, right? Obviously, less fights for Reyes, but he has 7 knockouts, 2 decisions, and 7 knockouts, 2 submissions, and 3 decisions. Excuse me. Now Prochazka has 24 knockouts, 2 submissions, and 1 decision. So we know what the game plan is. So whose power is going to outlast who's going to be more tired? Because I'll tell you what, Prochazka has a hell of a gas tank as well. So not only is he stalking you, not only are you getting tired because you're on the back foot, you're on your bicycle the whole time trying to get away from this man's power, but his power will translate. Now, we got to see how he fares in the UFC during a 5-round fight because he hasn't had one. He only had 3 rounds against Ozdemir, and that Ozdemir fight was back and forth. It wasn't as one-sided as people might think. That Ozdemir fight, actually, Yuri Prochazka, he was in a little bit of trouble until he was able to just get Ozdemir out of there because the power is too much. So when we're talking about value here, there is value on both sides, but I will say the earlier you bet, the better, because I think that this line is going to spread out a little bit further to where we're going to have a little less value on one of the 2 opponents in this matchup. Now, the most value comes from -135 Yuri Prochazka, and the reason why is because I truly believe, and it comes down to your self-belief, and I truly believe in the prospect that is Yuri Prochazka. I believe in the process that is, I'm going to get all this regional experience. I'm going to fight all over the world. But this is also his basically his American debut. This is taking place in Vegas. This is the first time that he will ever have fought on U.S. soil. So it'll be interesting to see where we go from here. But like I said, man, national Muay Thai champion. This dude's got heavy hands of stone, and Dominic Reyes has his work cut out for him. Now, I will say, if Reyes can pull it off, very impressive win. Very impressive win. That'll be a big test, and it'll go to show that there's not many people who can compete against Jan Blachowicz or, compete for that light heavyweight title. But, I mean, the man himself. So, that's what it comes down to, folks. I say the value is on Yuri Prochazka. I think that we're about to see a star in the making, someone who's really about to blow up on the UFC scene because he's been doing it forever. And 24 knockouts in 27 wins is very telling. But the UFC is where streaks come to die. Don't forget, that's what we always talk about here at All Factors Considered. So, that's going to be that one. And, I think at this point, we move on to the next one. Okay, so we got Cub Swanson here versus Giga Chikadze, right? So I'm very excited for this matchup. And if you were tuned into our post show last week on All Factors Considered, this is the one that I actually previewed a little bit. And I said, if you're going to tune into a fight, this is the fight that you need to tune into. And the reason why is because this has fight of the night, performance of the night, barn burner written all over it. So Giga Chikadze, the ninja, he comes in as a -160 favorite with a comeback of +125 for Cub Swanson, the veteran, the dude who's been here forever, the dude who has 27 victories under his belt in his MMA career, the individual who has 12 UFC victories in his career, which is a very hard thing to do. You have to stick around for a long time. And ultimately, after suffering a crazy ACL tear during a grappling match against Jake Shields, Cub Swanson's been able to pull something together, man. He's been able to really overcome some of those mental blocks that a lot of people have with knee injuries, especially in this sport where people kick you in the knee, kick you in the leg all day long right after you just got that thing repaired, right? So you want to be a little hesitant. You might not want to take that same knee kick. You might not even want to throw your own kicks, but luckily for Cub Swanson, man, this dude's got power in the hands and he knows how to use them. So in his last fight against Daniel Pineda, who's a UFC veteran, this dude is he's legit. He's legit. This dude is nice. Ultimately, Cub Swanson walked him down, put big bombs on him, and got him out of there in the second round. So, this is a Cub Swanson who was 37 years old. It's not the Cub Swanson we grew up watching, right? He's a BJJ black belt under Higan Machado, which is a big, big deal. Having a black belt under the Machados, under, the Henzo Gracies of the world, like, that's not the same black belt as just like, oh, I am a black belt, right? 6-time Fight of the Night winner with the most bonuses in featherweight history with 8, and he's been a UFC vet since 2011. So Giga Chikadze does have his work cut out for him, but I have to say Giga Chikadze is my favorite prospect on this entire card. Maybe besides Loma Luke Boon Mi, who's on the prelims. We're not going to be talking about her today, but listen, this dude's on a 7-fight win streak. He's 5-0 in the UFC, 12-2 in his MMA career. He's a third-degree karate black belt. He's a former karate, kickboxing, and Muay Thai champion, 30-plus kickboxing wins, and he fought at about 143 pounds in a kickboxing promotion called Glory Kickboxing, right? So this dude, in terms of striking, I would argue that in the featherweight division, he's the best striker in the featherweight division, bar none. Max Holloway, obviously, there's a case for that. I'm talking about Giga Chikadze is throwing crazy kicks at you, strikes from a million different angles. He throws his Giga kick. He throws crazy jumping somersault kick attacks. Like, it's crazy. And if you watch this fight against Pretty Boy Jamal Emmers, you would have seen him literally just throw himself at Emmers. Like, he did like a somersault mid-air and just threw himself at Emmers and somehow like landed the attack. So this is a tall, lanky dude who's got a 4-inch reach advantage on Cub Swanson, 74 inches to 70. He's 6 feet tall, so he's got 4 inches in height. So this is what it comes down to, folks. Like I said, Giga Chikadze, he's a minus 160 favorite, and Cub Swanson is a plus 125 favorite. And what I see is, in terms of paths to victory, right? I see a King's MMA product in Giga Chikadze who already had his striking down pat before he got to King's to MMA, where like a Rafael Dos Anjos, right? Like that's where he trains at. So what he's doing over there is he's shoring up some of that takedown defense. He's saying that I already know that there's 2 ways that people want to beat me. The first way is to wrestle me and put me down, and the second way is to submit me. You're not going to beat me on the feet. You know what I mean? I'm a kickboxer, Muay Thai champ. Come on, what are we doing? So he's going there to King's MMA. He's working with some of the best in the world. Marvin Vittori, I believe, trains out of King's MMA. So these are these big wrestling dudes, right? And he's saying that I'm going to take away the easiest path to victory against me. I'm going to make that harder, so you're not going to be able to take me down. And it's true, because if we're looking about a takedown defense, Giga Chikadze has a 68% takedown defense in his career. Now, it's important because Cub Swanson, he averages about a takedown per fight. So he knows how to get it down to the ground. I already talked about he is a black belt under Higan Machado. Like I said, big deal. But against Giga Chikadze, I think that he's going to have to see if he can get it done on the feet, because I think that if he spends too much time in Cub Swanson, if he spends too much time trying to, tackle Chikadze and, you know what I mean, get him to the ground and do all of these crazy things, he's going to end up gassing out, and Chikadze is going to pick him apart. His last fight was against Jamie Simmons, and it was such a beautiful, he threw his left leg. His left leg is the money shot. That's the money shot all day long. So speed, precision, take that money shot left leg. He hit Simmons in the body, came right up to the head, knocked him out. It was game over, man. So timing, anticipation, aside from just that one shot power, this dude is the full package. So Cub Swanson, unless he can control the clinch, because Jamie Simmons did have success against Giga Chikadze in the clinch in their last fight, unless you can do that, it's going to be a long night at the office for Cub Swanson. So I love the value at minus 160 for Giga Chikadze. I think Cub Swanson has been on a nice little run since losing like 4 straight. He got a win over Crone Gracie, who don't strike. He's a submission guy. I think all his wins prior to that was like 6 submission wins in a row. And then he got the big win over the journeyman Daniel Pineda, the UFC vet. But can you do it against a surging dude, a dude who nobody wants to fight in Giga Chikadze, a dude who has now finally, both of these fighters actually just cracked the top 15 in their division, number 14 and number 15 respectively. So value all day for Giga Chikadze. I just think that his striking is going to be too much, and Cub Swanson is going to really need to find a way to get this fight to the ground, because if he does not, I'm expecting a knockout for Giga Chikadze. Even though he's generally speaking, he is a decision fighter to a degree, at least in his most recent fights. But overall, 12-2, 7 knockouts, 1 submission, 4 decisions. Let's go for the ninja, Giga Chikadze. So hit that one and then move on. Okay, so this next fight is this one is a short notice fight. This next fight is something that Jan Kutalaba, the Incredible Hulk, right? You know, I like to, I like to compare him to Marvin Vettori. I think they're just two big, huge dudes who love to scream at people and intimidate them. Because I'm pretty sure that's what Jan Kutalaba did when he fought Khalil Roundtree, who was a monster in and of itself, but he just got in his face and screamed at him, and Roundtree was just like, oh my God, like, who is this monster standing in front of me? But he's fighting a old UFC vet, man, a dude who made his UFC debut in 2011, a dude by the name of Dustin Jacoby, who was replacing Devin Clark. And I think Devin Clark got an injury, something happened, but that got scrapped. This is now the fight that is in play. So let's talk about it, man. The favorite here is Jan Kutalaba, and it is to be expected, minus 140 with a comeback of plus 115 for Dustin Jacoby. But talking about kickboxers, Dustin Jacoby, he's fought in glory kickboxing. What do you know? From 2013 to 2017. Like I said, he made his UFC debut in 2011, had a tough go, got cut or got released or decided I don't want to fight in the UFC anymore, and went over to all these other different promotions, but spent a lot of time kickboxing and racked up a pretty decent record in kickboxing. But he returned to the UFC after a stint on the Dana White Contender Series back in 2020, so last year. So this is a dude who's the former Cage Warriors middleweight champion. Too bad you're not fighting at middleweight here, but that means that he has the experience. He knows what it takes to get to the top of the heat, right? Now, he is much bigger than Kutalaba, but Kutalaba is always the smaller, big powerhouse type dude, right? 6'1", 75-inch reach. Dustin Jacoby at 33 years old, so he's a little bit older than Kutalaba, who's 27. He's 6'4", 78-inch reach, and he's a factory ex Muay Thai fighter. So that's like where the Devontae Smiths of the world train, and the Anthony Smith, the Lionheart, that's where they train at. So classic Southpaw Orthodox matchup. Kutalaba is the Southpaw. Jacoby is the Orthodox fighter. Here's what we need to know. This is basically what it comes down to. Jan Kutalaba is probably going to look to get this fight to the floor. He just got knocked out twice by Magomed Ankalaev. He got knocked out by him first round knockout twice. And now, if you, really sit here and think about it, he's 15-6. That's a large portion of his losses. In his last 5, he's lost to Glover Teixeira and Ankalaev twice. Has a win over Khalil Roundtree, knocked him out in the first round, and Antigulov knocked him out in the first round. Those are big names. Those are big names if you know who these guys are in the UFC. So 2.4 takedowns per 15 minutes for Jan Kutalaba, and it's a good thing that Dustin Jacoby has a 70% takedown defense. And the last dude that he just fought, Maxime Grishin, who a lot of people thought that was very controversial. I think that Jacoby did just enough to edge it out. It's really, really important that he got that win, because Grishin is a dude who wants to sit there in the clinch, a dude who wants to take you down, a dude who wants to pressure you Eastern European boxing style. So it's important that Jacoby has the 70% takedown defense, but in that Grishin fight, you'll see Jacoby get in bad spots all the time. And against Kutalaba is a dude who you do not want to be in a bad spot against, because I think when it comes down to that heart, when it comes down to being able to somehow, some way pull a trick out of your sleeve or pull a rabbit out of your hat or whatever the case may be, when the fight is not going your way and you need to turn it around, I give that edge to Kutalaba all day long, because Dustin Jacoby, he's been around for a long time, he's experienced, he's done it all, seen it all that good stuff. You do have to sit here and think, come on, man. This dude is taking this fight on short notice. He's more of a, I'm gonna stick around and I'm gonna grind it out. And if this fight goes long, I'll probably win it. But I don't necessarily anticipate him just kind of like starching people out in the first round the way that he's done once upon a time. Now, he did that against Justin Ledet. That was a first round TKO. But I believe that fight against Justin Ledet, I'm pretty sure that dude was just a boxer. He just didn't, couldn't really. I think he got leg kicked to death in that fight, if I'm not mistaken. But before that, unanimous decision win at the Contender Series, unanimous decision win in some random promotion, SCL, I don't know what that is. And then he lost a second round submission in Bellator against an individual with the last name of Salter. So I'm super high on Dustin Jacoby outside of him fighting Jan Kutalaba. If he's fighting people who are more in his kind of range, right? Not the top 15, but maybe, top 25 to top 50. I like Dustin Jacoby in those fights. But fighting Jan Kutalaba, a dude who needs to desperately get back on his winning track after suffering 2 very embarrassing losses to Magomed Ankalaev. The first one, which was disputed. The second one, which he thought he was just going to come in and tear him apart. He got picked apart. So Jan Kutalaba, big loopy striker. Jacoby can have success with the straight shots. Generally speaking, that is his methodology. But give me Kutalaba, because he's a 2012 European Combat Sambo champion, one-time Fight of the Night winner. That was a fight against Jared Cannonier, very impressive, with an 80% finish rate and Greco-Roman wrestling background growing up as a kid. So I think that wrestling is going to be important in this fight, and Jacoby's going to need to stay off his butt if he wants a chance at winning this fight. But I give the striking edge to Kutalaba in terms of the power, the precision, and technique. Got to go Jacoby. But at the end of the day, you bet on Jan Kutalaba because he is the most valuable play, because in all honesty, this fight probably should be much higher, and it probably probably will be by the time Saturday rolls around. I'd expect Kuntala to be anywhere in the 200s or 300s in terms of a favorite against Dustin Jacoby. So that's my take on that fight, Ion Kuntala versus Dustin Jacoby. Okay, this next fight, folks, this is one of my favorite fights on this card, but not necessarily because of the matchup, but because of one of the fighters involved. So starting off, Tarzan, man, Sean Strickland. Dude came back from a horrible motorcycle accident. He got hit by a car when he was on a motorcycle, and he's come back with a vengeance, man. So in his last two fights from injury, he fought Jack Marshman, the old Welsh, boxer, and he beat the brakes off of that, man, talking about, like, why won't you just fall? He's punching him in the face, screaming at him, like, just fall down. Stop staying here. I want to knock you out. It was crazy. And even at the very end of that fight, what won me over as a fan is Sean Strickland was sitting there talking about, like, all right, man, I'll stand right here in the center of the cage and we can go out and brawl. I'll give you a chance to win. I know I'm clearly winning this fight on points, but I'll give you a chance to win. Let's sit here and bang it out because he's a savage. And I follow this dude on Instagram, man. He's got a screw loose, but in all of the best ways in terms of being an MMA fighter. Now, Sean Strickland is 30 years old, 6'1", fighting out of sequence jiu-jitsu, with the 76-inch reach. Now, Christoph Jotko, man, this dude is been around forever. He's been a UFC vet since 2013, and it feels like he's gotten absolutely no love, very little recognition over the years. However, he's a BJJ brown belt, one-time fight of the night, and one-time performance of the night winner. 31 years old, 6'1", 77-inch reach, trains at American Top Team, Southpaw, all that good stuff, right? These dudes are very, very similar in terms of their grappling. Both average about a takedown per fight. Both got very good takedown defense, 81% for Strickland, 87% for Jotko. The difference here is that Jotko is a technician. He's a precision fighter. He has a very Eastern European style in terms of his striking, but he has a million weapons, and that's kind of the beauty. Sean Strickland's a little more limited in the amount of weapons that he has, but for Jotko, he'll stick behind that jab, pop that jab, throw the right hand, throw the big high kicks, throw the calf kicks, spinning back elbows, step in elbows. Like, it doesn't matter. Jotko's there and he's throwing it all. And that's what I really like about him, because he could be in the clinch and just throw a spinning back elbow out of nowhere and nobody would expect it. And that's the thing right there, man. So we can't discount Jotko, and I honestly think plus 205 for Jotko is not a fair line. I think that they're hyping up Sean Strickland a little bit too much, because Sean Strickland, even though he's a killer, even though he works, his whole entire offense, the foundation of his offense is built behind his 1-2, right? So the jab straight, and then he'll stand right there. Before, he used to be a little too mobile. He used to try to get out the way a little bit too much. But now his game plan is, I'm going to walk forward and I'm going to 1-2 you to death, and you're going to fall. And it's weird because he doesn't put a lot of power on it. Everything is from the chin. Everything he throws, straight from the chin. Not no big windup, not no big overhand, not no big hooking shots. Everything is just bow, 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 bow. So this, once again, for Jotko, he's fast, he's got the in and out movement and a lot of weapons, and a clean technical fight favors Jotko all day long. If this is clean, if this is just like a straight up boxing match, you got to favor Jotko here just because of how technical he is, and how Sean Strickland, even though he'll take the Kamaru Usman approach, at least the one that he did against George Masvidal, where it was nothing for free, right? So if you throw something at me, I'm popping a jab at you. I'm not letting you hit me without me returning something back on you every single time. And that's Sean Strickland's approach. So I like the minus 275 because I know that Sean Strickland is a dog from watching his fights. You can see it time and time again. This dude is just different. This dude lives to fight. Like, he'll get cut and be like, it was an honor to be on the receiving end, and actually I get to bleed a little bit because normally I make people bleed. So I love this. Thank you for the honor and the pleasure of making me bleed, right? He's, a sacrifice to the just bleed gods, right, of MMA. But Jotko is absolutely no joke, man. When we're talking about methodology, 22-3 for Sean Strickland, 10 knockouts, 4 submissions, 8 decisions. And for Christoph Jotko, he's 22-4, so very similar. Like 22-3 for Strickland, 22-4 for Jotko, 6 knockouts, 1 submission, and here's the big kicker: 15 decision wins. And that's why I think he's gotten little recognition, because it's not the most exciting thing to watch, 15 decision wins. You know what I mean? Like decision after decision after decision. And if you go into his last 5, he won all 3. See, he's 3-2 in his last 5. All 3 victories have come between unanimous or split decision. And then the 2 losses were both knockout losses. Knocked out in round 2 versus Uriah Hall, knocked out round 3 versus Brad Tavares. So if the chin is questionable, this is going to go Sean Strickland all day long. And I'm going to be honest with you, even though I just played devil's advocate for Jotko about how technical he is and all of that good stuff, and I don't think this is going to be a clean fight, because Sean Strickland now, his game plan is to make everything a dogfight. Everything. Nothing for free, nothing easy. He's going to scream at you, probably slap you up a couple times, hit you a back fist, hit you with weird shots that you just wouldn't expect. And listen, at his gym, you know, when he's on Instagram doing sparring footage and all that, he'll be like, anybody can get it. Like, nobody wants to spar me. I have a hard time finding sparring partners. Anybody can come through and get it. Bring your toughest, biggest, baddest dude and see if he even stands a chance, because I promise I'm going to beat the brakes off of him, and don't hold me liable for anything. You stepped in here. This was your choice. So for that reason, Sean Strickland, I think he gets it done. I think he can get the job done by knockout if this really is a dogfight. But if it's clean, man, don't be surprised if Krzysztof Jotko pulls the upset. The way he did against Eric Anders, man. A lot of people, he was a small favorite against Eric Anders, but he was able to just be too much of a technician, get out the way, use his movement. But Sean Strickland has a lot of movement as well. And, you know, listen, similar reach, similar height, it'll be a banger. This is going to be fight of the night written all over it as well, as long as Jotko's willing to engage. So that's what I got on that one. Okay, so we got two wrestlers on our hands here. We got Merab Dvalishvili facing off against Cody the Spartan Stamen, man. So these are two bantamweights. Dvalishvili, he's on a 5-fight win streak, 12-4 in MMA, 5-2 in the UFC. Listen, folks, we got a judo black belt. We got a combat sambo silver medalist back in 2019 in Dvalishvili, former Ring of the Combat 135-pound champ. And listen, this dude has the most takedowns in bantamweight UFC history for any active fighter right now with 41. Now he's running into another buzzsaw, another crazy wrestler in Cody Stamen. He's a former NCAA D2 wrestler, multiple-time regional champ at 135 pounds. Even though he took his last two fights at featherweight just to stay busy, he's really a bantamweight, two-time performance of the night winner. And listen, man, this is going to be either a really intensive wrestling match that we're all about to tune into, or this is going to be one of those rare occasions when you get two submission aces, two BJJ aces, or two wrestling aces who decide, well, my wrestling is really good and your wrestling is really good, and I don't want to get tired having to try to wrestle somebody who I know has great takedown defense. So this is going to be a kickboxing match instead. And if it is a kickboxing match instead, there's a lot of value to be had here on Cody Stamen, because plus 200, man, his striking, he wings some big hooks and does stuff like that, but so does Dvalishvili. And to sit here and anybody try to sit here and convince that Dvalishvili is this dude who's going to sit here and just necessarily pick apart Cody Stamen, well, on one hand, it could happen. He does have a 68-inch reach as opposed to 64.5 for Cody Stamen, which is very, very short. And let me actually just double check that, because that is like very, very short. And it is, 64, dudes. Oh, both orthodox. Dvalishvili, he averages 7 takedowns a fight. And this is where it's going to be important, because if Cody Stamen, who has an 80% takedown defense, if he has anything to say about it, he wants to get the takedown. He averages 3 takedowns a fight. But it's like, if you hear 3, you're like, oh my God, that's crazy. 7 from Dvalishvili? Yeah, man. He ties records. He's over there training out of Sarah Longo Fight Team. Of course, we got Cody Stamen fighting there out of Michigan, top team. And I just don't know what to say about this, but I don't know what to expect because of these two. These two people are just crazy grapplers, crazy wrestlers. These are the two of the best wrestlers in the division outside of Aljamain Sterling, pretty much. And we already saw Aljamain Sterling. He put Cody Stamen in a beautiful, it was like a knee bar off his back. Like, he put a backpack on Stamen and then like reached down and grabbed a knee and just knee barred him. And that was game over. So we saw Cody Stamen. That's actually his only submission loss. And that was, let me see, that was his 5th fight ago, right? 5 fights ago was that submission loss. Since then, he got a unanimous decision win against Alex Perez, a draw against Song Yadong, big win against Brian Kelleher. That was huge win. And then he lost his last fight against Jimmy Rivera. So this is going to be a big opportunity for Cody Stamen to get back in the win column. But when you look at Dvalishvili, who's got his last wins against John Dodson, against Gustavo Lopez, Casey Kenny, big wins, man. I got to go Dvalishvili here, minus 265, folks. But if I could recommend anything, I'd say probably be your best bet to stay away from this one, just because there's no like real clear alpha in this one. Both of them got the wrestling chops. Both of them can strike. Both of them can knock people out. If we're looking at knockouts, Dvalishvili has 2 and Cody Stamen has 6. And Dvalishvili, actually, I think he's either number 1 or number 2 in terms of total fight time in the division. So like, generally speaking, he goes to decision. He has 9 decision wins, but Cody Stamen has 11. So I would stay away personally. But if you're just going off of like betting with your friends, doing stuff like that, you got to give the edge to Dvalishvili. But you do not be surprised if Cody Stamen could spring an upset. Similar to Jotko, but I give Cody Stamen even higher chance of springing an upset against Merab Dvalishvili. So That's the last bantamweight matchup. And then finally, folks, this 6 fight. So we had a lot of stuff to go through, and then I'll just run through a couple of prop bets before we get out of here. But we got Poliana Botejo, versus Luana Carolina, man. And first, I got to give a little bit of context because a lot of people don't know who either of these fighters is, but especially Luana Carolina. Now, she was on the wrong end of a knee bar in her last fight against Ariane Lipski, and she partially tore her left ACL. She heard 3 pops. That's from an interview of hers. And listen, man, it's rough because her nickname is the Dread, right? I like that. She got big dreads and whatnot. But the thing that sucks about that is because it's like karma in a way. So Carolina, she's one of the biggest submission artists in the division because right now we're talking about women's flyweight division, right? So 125 pounds. She's top 5 in submission attempts at 125 pounds. Now is she top 5 in submission victories? No, but she's 1-1 in the UFC, so she hasn't had that many opportunities, and it's actually very telling to be top 5 in attempts and only 2 fights, right? But the last fight went very, very poorly. Lipski basically just put her on the ground in the first round, and while Carolina was chasing some type of submission, like a heel hook or something, Ariane Lipski, she gave up her back, saw the knee there, and was just like, "Oh, okay, I guess I'll take this." You heard Carolina scream in agony. It was incredible, not in a good way either. But listen, she has a tough test against her in her return from that injury against Poliana Botejo, who's a BJJ black belt. She's a Muay Thai black. I don't think she's actually a BJJ black belt. I might have got that one wrong, but I think she's a BJJ blue belt and a Muay Thai black belt. And she actually has the fastest finish in strawweight history in 33 seconds, man. And had a body kick and some punches. It was pretty incredible, but. This is also an individual who's a former Extreme Fighting Club or Fighting Championship flyweight champion, right? So she has regional championship experience. She's 32 years old. She actually didn't get into MMA. Believe it or not, she didn't learn anything about martial arts until she was 24 years old. Then she joined Nova União out there in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil and whatnot. Listen, man, she's really big for the flyweight division. Her first 3 fights were in strawweight, actually. So she was big at strawweight, moved up to flyweight, still big. And listen, she's hurt multiple opponents with body kicks, man. Her striking is really where it's at. That's her biggest chance of victory is the striking. She's a minus 255 favorite with a plus 190 comeback for Carolina. And, using those body kicks, throwing real heat, that's the key for Botejo here. And I'll tell you, she has a clear striking advantage. It's not even close. The what you have to worry about is Carolina. She's just going to grab onto you and just try to, rip your knee or break your arm or, tear your ACL or do something like that, because that's her style. So Carolina, she's tall, she's lanky, right? So she's got a 69-inch reach. That's two inches in reach advantage. And she's 5'7". She's actually a little bit shorter. But her style is Muay Thai intensive, right? So what she wants to do, she hops up close, tight guard, Muay Thai style. She tries to get big kicks up to the top of the head, try to grab you, put you in the clinch, throw those knees. So Poliana Botejo might stay in that clinch because she's powerful in the clinch. You know what I mean? She can grab. I don't know if she wants to be on the floor on this fight, but I know that if Botejo, who has a 80% takedown defense in her 5 fights in the UFC, if she can keep the fight standing, it's gonna be such a long night for Carolina, and I feel bad that this is her comeback fight because Botejo, she's been taken down 5 times in her 5 fights in the UFC. She's been taken down 5 times total. 3 by Jillian Robertson in her last fight, which was ugly. She got ragdolled by Robertson, and 2 by Cynthia Calvillo. Now you'd also notice that those 2 names are some of the best wrestlers, some of the best grapplers in the entire division. So Carolina, even though she is a killer, she's a killer in terms of a submission artist. She's 6-2. Botejo's 8-3. These are 2 more prospects than anything else, man. I think this should just be a really good one on the feet because Botejo, while she's not going to throw as much, she throws really hard. And for Carolina, she lands 6 significant strikes per minute, but it doesn't really have much on it. You know what I mean? She's really lanky. So where those 6 significant strikes per minute come in is her throwing blitzes at you, trying to just get off you, left, right, left, right, left, right. So as much as I want to vouch for Carolina, I try to do my best to make this competitive and see how it could be competitive. And the best option for her is she has 100% takedown defense and she averages 2.4 submissions, per 15 minutes, right? So it's like submission. If it goes to the ground, if she goes for the submissions, if you're able to lock something up, you got to go Carolina. But that's a rare situation. And I think that's why she's a plus 190 underdog. And Botejo, man, even though she lost to Jillian Robertson in her last fight, she got a pretty impressive win against Lauren Mueller in the fight before. But the one thing to notice is that Botejo, she does tend to gas out in the third round. So maybe Carolina can, take advantage of that. But it's her first fight back since losing to Ariana Lipski. I think it was about 14 months she had to take off in between those fights, rehabbing the knee, getting the knee right. So that's it for this NFC. We're clearly out of time, folks. If you're listening, we are out of time. But I do want to go over these prop bets really, really quickly, and we'll just get straight out of here, folks. So I only got 2 props for you, and these are the things because at the time when I'm on Oregon Scoreboard Lottery, we're about to move over to a Vegas scoreboard, a Vegas sports book here in the next couple of months, folks. But for now, when I'm looking at the prop bets, these are literally the only 2 fights that they have props up for. Everything else, they're just sticking to the money line, at least for now, preliminarily, right? So I wanted to look at Dominic Reyes versus Yuri Prochazka. Like I said, Dominic Reyes really, really struggled against Jan Blachowicz in terms of being able to handle that power, man. Once he felt it, it was just, only a matter of time until he got him out of there, right? So I'm looking at this for one of 2 options, or actually 2 options, because Yuri Prochazka could just start Dominic Reyes. I mean, when we look at Prochazka and we look at his last 5, we can clearly see that all 5 wins have come by knockout round 2, round 1, round 3, and then a submission, actually. So 4 of the 5 by knockout. But he's getting people out of there early, man. That's what he does. I also did mention, though, that Prochazka's last 5, they all have been some old men, right? So it'll be interesting to see. But I think Dominic Reyes, he has a chance of actually knocking out Yuri Prochazka by catching him slipping with his hands down, leaning with his head. And if Dominic Reyes could land that big left hand, because he is a southpaw, right? If he could bring that big left hand down the pipe, man, he could catch Yuri slipping and it could be game over. But under 1.5 rounds for either fighter, I think that the likelihood of this going the distance, it just doesn't seem too likely to me, to be honest. So I like that prop bet. I'm favoring that one. And then lastly, Cup Swanson versus Giga Chikadze. I go Chikadze by points. I think Chikadze is going to win the fight just in general. And I think Cup Swanson, the only way that he'd be able to beat Giga Chikadze, in my opinion, is by being able to smother him on the ground, lay and pray. But I think that Chikadze's wrestling defense over there at King's MMA, he's been working on it too much, a little bit too sharp. And generally speaking, he's not a knockout fighter. He's got 7 knockouts, but he's got 4 decisions. And in the last 5, only 1 knockout in his last 5 fights, and that was in his last fight against Jamie Simmons. So Cup Swanson's experience, he's a veteran. I don't think that he will allow himself to get out of place, in the wrong spot, so he can get knocked out. But then again, nobody tries to get knocked out at the end of the day. But I like Giga Chikadze by points at plus 150. And that's the prop bet for you, folks. So, I gave you just about everything that you needed in terms of my analysis of the fights at hand. Like I said, UFC Vegas 25 should be a very, very good one. I don't know if we should, kind of taper our expectations because of how crazy UFC 261 was. But then again, they had 3 titles on the line on that fight. No titles on the line in this fight. But we do got the making of somebody who will be challenging for that light heavyweight belt in the very near future. Whether it's Dominic Reyes trying to challenge again, or if it's Yuri Prochazka finally making it count, getting here to the UFC. It'll be fun. And folks, don't forget, like, subscribe, drop a comment, you know what I mean? Hit the little yellow notification tab or whatever the case may be, because when you subscribe to the show, you get access to all 3 of the shows. All bets aren't created equal, our preview show and our post show. So the schedule goes Friday for the preview show, Monday for the post show, and Wednesday for the betting show, which is today. So that's all I got for you, folks. Give me a follow on Instagram at D496 or on All Factors Considered page, our main hub at All Factors Considered. And lastly, check out the website at allfactorsconsidered.com. It's simple, it's easy, and it'll all be in the show notes below. But that's it for me, and until next time, folks, see you on Friday. Peace.